distribution, compared to just 12% of white adults. But black families are not only more concentrated at the bottom of the income distribution, they are also less likely to experience upward mobility out of the bottom quintile, bottom 50%. Conditional on being raised by a grandparent, in the bottom fifth, 66% of white parents escape the bottom fifth as adults. That is only true of 37% of black parents. Among today's adults in their 30s raised in the bottom fifth, 56% of whites and only 42% of blacks have risen out of the bottom. See, so we have some traction there. We have some traction. And in our community, we have there's a gulf between our middle class, if you want to call them that, and the poor, the bottom 50%. So there's black mobility. We do, in spite of all this, we still raising upward. But the problem is that those who have become successful are indifferent to those who have not made it. And I'm trying to cure that issue here. We can all prosper together, but those who have made it have to reach back, and we need to pull up our whole community. Those who want to be pulled up. Some people, they're not ready, right? We can get their kids. But if we want to create an industrial environment where we can prosper, we can start creating businesses and enterprises and make sure we got companies that's on the stock exchange, our own stock exchange. We have to think differently, because most of that black wealth is based upon jobs. So that means that we have to take some of that money and invest it in future growth and development. See, because most of our wealth is just from a job, which means that it's not encumbered on machinery or manufacturing plant, none of that. We just got pure cash, and we manage our budgets properly. So we have money that we can invest in future. We're trying to bring manufacturing back to this country. And we're dropping from number one because this country is suppressing the brightest minds. We bring in foreign talent over here to do jobs that our children need to be trained for. See? But until we step up the game, we cannot make demands on these people who engage in criminal conduct. That's treason against America, with the type of conduct that they're engaging in. When they stripped down the 70s, they stripped the manufacturing plants, they take the companies, they bought the companies and stripped it down and sold it off piecemeal. That was criminal. And now we reaping that's coming back to hunt. The rooster's coming back to hunt us. See? Because we stripped our and want somebody else to do the work for you. Now, we used to make money based upon productivity, and now they just making money off of money. They using money to make money, non-productive type capacity. Doesn't make sense. And then we slowly going down. That's why we not number one right now. And everything that we get is made in China. Even our toilet paper, made in China. We don't make anything. Maybe guns. On top of that, black adults who were not raised in the bottom fifth are much more likely to fall into poverty than white adults. Among the parents of today's adults that were raised in the middle fifth of the income distribution, half of black parents, 51%, fell into the bottom fifth, compared with just 14% of white parents. For today's adults raised in the middle fifth, a third, 33% of blacks and 13% of whites are now in poverty. There's no generational wealth. We don't have a succession plan in place. So just because you parent are doing well, that don't mean your children is going to do well. You got to make sure, that's what this program, every generation needs to be educated and prepared. Every generation. See? And your parents are wealthy, that's their wealth. That's not your wealth. People complain, well, I grew up wealthy and I had all this and that, but you ain't got it now. People telling you about, what I used to have, but you ain't got it now. So you just can't live for the moment. You got to prepare for the future too. See? 3 generations of poverty is almost uniquely a black experience. Generational poverty. For the last 2 generations, we see higher starting poverty rates, lower upward mobility rates, and higher downward mobility rates for black families. When we put these findings together, we see stark racial divides and the persistence of multi-generational poverty. The figure 1 shows, like I said, you can pull this article up, the black-white gap in multiracial poverty, on the Brookings.edu, right? Figure 1 shows the percent of black and white families who experience poverty across 1, 2, and 3 generations. See? I mean, you can have first generation, second generation, living well, wealthy, but that third generation, the kids don't know nothing. You're not training them nothing. You know, I got one client right now, one of the elders that her and the husband did quite well, got a $1.5 million estate, but the kids, grandchildren, the kids are not there because they lived a destructive lifestyle, but the grandkids on drugs, in and out of jail, and don't know nothing. Don't know anything, can't even read and figure out stuff. And that wealth is going to be gone. In the most recent generation, 42% of black adults in our sample live in poverty compared to 15% of white adults. Just 5% of white adults were in the bottom fifth after having parents in the bottom fifth. But that was true of 32% of black adults. Across 3 generations, just 1.2% of white adults, or around 1 in 100, were in the bottom fifth after having grown up with parents and grandparents in the bottom fifth as well. The rate of black adults, however, is considerably higher at 21.3%. Poverty persists much longer in black communities than in white communities. See? So we fighting against the odds, we struggling, we moving up, got the mobility, but the generational wealth isn't there. We're not building on top of that. See? We're not playing the game. We just working hard and making money, and this gone, and every generation got to start from scratch. And then if you do leave something and do everything right, kids fighting over it. And they becoming enemies when they've been left a blessing. And I got so many stories on that, it's unbelievable. In other words, experiencing poverty for 3 generations straight is almost uniquely a black experience. Black adults in their 30s are over 16 times more likely than white adults to be in the 3rd generation of poverty in a row. In fact, black Americans are 41% more likely to be in the 3rd generation of poverty than white Americans are to be poor. Excuse me. Of those black and white Americans who experience 1, 2, and 3 generations of poverty, figure 2 shows that what share are black. Once again, the findings are stark. Black Americans make up 44% of those experiencing 1 generation of poverty. Even though poverty rates are higher among black families, they make up a smaller share of the overall population. For 2 and 3 generations of poverty, the shares rise to 64 and 83% respectively. They need to do a study on other people, like the Asian community. They're working together. They come here. They have a culture of studying. Their parents want them to be doctors and lawyers and studying hard and so forth like that. But when they become Americanized, we need to have to study that first generation, but then the second generation does well. Then after that, how do they fare? Once the children become Americanized and they don't want to do what their parents did. That'd be a good study too. But see, because they keep statistics on everything, that's how they know we at the bottom. See? But then it can backfire too, because once they see us moving up, then all of a sudden, unless we keep it pushing, then the attack is going to come on again. See? So that way we got to push hard. So just getting there is not enough. We got to maintain it. See, because we have to cut the head off of racism, the ugly head of racism, because it has reared its head again. We need to cut his head off so it'll never rear its head again. We find that half of black adults in the bottom fifth today, 51%, had both a parent and a grandparent in the bottom fifth, but only 8% of white adults in the bottom fifth had poor parents and grandparents. But we know why. You know what I'm saying? We know why. It's not like they earned it and fought for it. It was just given to them. The government, they used the government. The government propped them up. See? That's why we have to be stronger. Multigenerational analysis help us form a more complete picture of the inequalities we see today. By just comparing differences in black and white income levels today, or mobility rates across just one generation, we understate the extent of racial inequality and obscure the social economic context that gave rise to these gaps. We know it's deeper than that. But just because you don't have what other people have, don't mean that you go into debt to live. If you can't afford it, you live within your means. See, I understand you got to go into the loan to get a car, or maybe you want to do that to buy a house or whatever. But in the course, we talk about these things and how to strategize and so forth. But we need to get it out of our mindset. We get into that TV, fake it till you make it stuff and trying to look good on the outside, but you're empty on the inside. And you're trying to keep up with the Jones. You see somebody else with something, you got to have that too, and you got to have more. That's a sickness. You know what I'm saying? That greed is good stuff. That's their sickness. We should not make it our sickness. We're in debt by trillions of dollars because of greed, over-consuming. You can't run a household like that through overconsumption. See? Just because they do it doesn't mean that we do it. We have to think. We have to think. And we have to remember whose we are. We have to be better. We have to do better. Mobility policy must focus on opportunities for Black Americans. These are the words on paper. You have to make that happen. At least they open up the door. You should be hearing this stuff now. But you have to do it for yourself. The white America's not going to do it. And especially the Black leadership and politicians are not going to do it because they into themselves. See? These are just words they're talking. They're just words. But you have the ability. You're doing the work. We have the wealth. Our combined wealth of Black America is compared to the budget of the state of California. We can do this. These descriptive results put the difference in opportunities that Black and white Americans have experienced front and center. These trends are indicative of social barriers that have persistently inhibited Black upward mobility. While increasing mobility for all is a laudable and broadly popular goal, our results point to the need to focus specifically on Black mobility, or its absence, in the formulation of policy. That's a beautiful thing, if it be its own policy. See? But it changes from generation to generation. The KKK moved from the field burning crosses into the government. See? And then once we send people into government, we have to make sure that our community supports them. And finally, is that we have civil rights leaders. We have people who put their life on the line. They shouldn't die poor and broke and destitute. We got to start supporting them. You can't send a chief into war and they ain't got no soldiers, no Indians to back them up. That's nonsense. They're going to compromise themselves. They're going to sell out because they got to eat. They got to feed their family. See? But we have leadership and we have politicians. We got preachers. We need to hold them accountable. We got all these ministers and stuff like that, but we ain't got no Black schools and no Black universities. What's up with that? And they shouldn't be begging for funds. We have to go beg to the government and Trump to fund our Black institutions. But we got all this Black money that you put into these churches every Sunday and so forth, but it's not making it back to our communities. Our communities are falling apart. Our children can't read and write. We have no support system and infrastructure. The Catholic Church has it. Why can't we have it? Our leadership has no vision. Without a vision, the people perish. Are perishing because our leadership has no vision. This is a ministry that has vision. The Temple of Inner Peace and Prosperity has vision. setting you up for success.